They say you always remember the morning of your wedding, the nerves, the excitement, the sense that your life is about to change forever. They were right about the last part, just not in the way I expected. That I woke up early, too early. The sun hadn't even crested the tops of the trees outside my window, but my body was already tense, like it knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. The house was quiet except for the sound of coffee brewing downstairs and the occasional creak of wood settling under. Pressure. My tux was hanging in the corner, sharp and still in its plastic. That I should have been nervous about the vows, the crowd, the 100 little details waiting to trip me up. Instead, I was staring at my phone. 6:43 a.m. 1 Unread message from my brother, Evan. Call me before the ceremony, important, and check her closet. Don't ask, just do it. That was it.no emojis.no, lol. No typical sarcasm that defined our relationship since childhood, just cold, flat urgency. That I put the phone down, rubbed my face, and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Check her closet. The phrase rattled in my chest like a loose screw. That I wanted to laugh it off. Evan had a tendency to be overprotective, especially when it came to women in my life. After my last engagement fell apart, my fiancée ran off to Mexico with our wedding planner. Evan had developed a sixth sense for spotting red flags, and he never missed a chance to tell me when something felt off. But this time was different. His message wasn't opinion. It was a directive. A warning. That I sat at the edge of the bed in the guest room of my best man's house, trying to silence the whisper growing louder in the back of my mind. Why now? We'd been together 2 years. Emily was smart, kind, thoughtful, at least on the surface. That I had no reason not to trust her. No reason except a message from the one person who'd never cried wolf. I got dressed, left the house quietly, and drove across town to the home Emily and I had recently bought together. She was at her hotel suite with the bridal party, getting her makeup done, rehearsing her vows, sipping champagne. That I told myself that as I drove, that this was a simple errand, that I just needed peace of mind, but my knuckles were white against the steering wheel the entire way. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my pulse was hammering in my ears. That I let myself in with my key. Everything looked normal, clean, still, too still. The house always felt a little cold, but today it was something more, like it had been emptied of meaning, like a showroom, not a home. That I hesitated at the foot of the stairs. My phone buzzed again. You're not crazy, just look. No name, just that message. Evan again. That I moved up the stairs like I was walking into enemy territory. Slow, quiet. My steps barely made a sound on the hardwood. Her closet was always meticulously organized, by color, by season, by occasion. That was her thing. She liked control, liked appearances. There wasn't a single sock out of place. But on the top shelf, behind a stack of photo albums, I noticed something tucked inside a worn shoebox. The box wasn't hers. I'd never seen it before. I pulled it down, heart in my throat, hands suddenly cold. Inside were papers, documents, notes, photocopies of emails, bank statements, and then photos, her, and another man, not recent, at least not all of them, but consistent, familiar, the same man in different locations, different clothes, always with her, always close. That I felt like I was watching someone else's life collapse, someone dumber, more naive. But it was mine. That I dropped to the floor, knees buckling under the weight of reality. My hands shook, my breath caught in my throat, and all I could think was, how long had she been planning this, and worse, why didn't I see it? The floor was cold beneath me. My legs had gone numb. I don't know how long I sat there, surrounded by the proof of something I hadn't wanted to admit, photos, receipts, emails between her and a man named Travis, her ex, the one she'd claimed was just a phase in college. A name that had come up once or twice, always with that breezy dismissiveness women use when they want to kill a conversation without actually lying. But it wasn't the photos that cracked something inside me, not the flirty notes or the grainy images from hotel rooms. It was the shoebox itself, the feeling it gave me, like it wasn't just hidden, it was waiting. As if it had been left behind not by accident, but as a loose end she didn't think I'd pull on. I stood, legs unsteady, and scanned the rest of the closet. Her side of it was surgically neat, but behind her winter coats something caught my eye, a soft leather clutch, the kind she never used, half-zipped and barely visible. Inside it, a phone, not her regular phone, the one she left out during dinner, always face up, always just unlocked enough to be polite but private enough to keep boundaries. No, this one was a burner. Cheap.old. No password. I hesitated before turning it on, like flipping that switch would be the final nail in whatever version of my life I'd been clinging to. The screen blinked to life. Battery 38%. I opened the messages. Travis, we just need to be patient. once the honeymoon's done, we move on it that he won't see it coming. Emily, he's got no idea that I've already seen the prenup. There's a clause, once we're married, I can access the joint accounts. Travis, so we're still on track for the Cayman setup? Emily, I've already wired the deposit. You'll have access once the transfer clears, just keep playing the ghost until then. There were more, dozens, scattered between planning and cold strategy.no affection.no romance, just logistics, bank accounts, exit strategies, private emails forwarded from my laptop to a hidden address she created using my mother's maiden name. They'd even discussed who would play the devastated widow for the press. If he goes public with it, lean into the heartbreak, cry pretty. I sat down again, the phone still in my hand, my world narrowing into something sharp and sterile. It wasn't a love story that fell apart. It was a con. I wasn't a fiancé. I was a target. A step in a long game, and I had walked into it with both eyes wide open. The missed calls she brushed off with bad service. The way she never let me see her phone without subtly shifting the screen away, the moment I told her about my business loan clearing, and the next day, she surprised me with tickets to a honeymoon scouting trip. She hadn't cried when we got engaged. I thought it was nerves, now I knew better. It wasn't nerves. It was calculation. I leaned my head back against the wall, let the ceiling come into focus. It felt like the world had cracked right down the middle, but at the same time, it all finally made sense. Every little doubt I'd pushed aside, every late-night whisper of, "You're being paranoid," every gut feeling I had buried to keep the fantasy alive. This wasn't a woman who loved me, this was a woman who chose me. Because I was stable, trusting, easy to manipulate, that was the moment I stopped being the victim in my own story, and started thinking like a chess player. They say betrayal hits hardest when it's unexpected, but once the sting fades, all that's left is clarity, and in my case, a long, sharp silence where emotion used to live. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I didn't even feel sad anymore. By the time I left that house, I wasn't a man walking away from heartbreak. I was a man walking into a war room, and she had no idea the countdown had already started. The first call I made wasn't to my brother. Wasn't to cancel the wedding. It was to Lisa Grant, the sharpest attorney I knew. She'd helped me draft the prenup last year, back when I still believed marriage was a partnership. She picked up on the second ring. "Didn't expect to hear from you before the honeymoon," she said, cheerful. My voice was flat, "The wedding's still on. But I need the prenup pulled, our accounts frozen, and I want everything, she could access locked down before 2 p.m. There was a pause, then her tone shifted. "What happened? I'll brief you fully in person, just know it's fraud. Premeditated, and I have the evidence." By 10 a.m., I was in her office downtown, the burner phone, the photos, screenshots, even audio. I'd started recording voice memos the minute I opened the box, every click, every breath. Lisa took one look at the messages and her jaw clenched. "She's running a financial long con," she muttered, flipping through the prints. "That ex of hers, Travis, I've seen his name before, minor fraud charges in 2 states, but nothing stuck. He's careful." I nodded. "Not careful enough." "Okay, first move, freeze your joint accounts, pull any cash she might think she's entitled to. Second, we notify the bank holding your business credit line that there may be attempted unauthorized access. Third, we review the prenup." Lisa handed me a copy I hadn't looked at in months. "You remember the sunset clause? 5-year vesting period," I said. "She walks now, she walks with nothing." "Exactly, but if you go through with the ceremony, she gets her foot in the door." She flipped to page 7, "Marital trust becomes accessible upon legal union. She doesn't need to stay long, just long enough to be legally your wife." "Not gonna happen," I said, quiet but final. Then we bait the trap. And just like that, the plan began. I contacted my financial advisor and changed the passwords to all portfolio dashboards. I logged into our shared wedding website and disabled her admin access. I made 2 calls to vendors, one to the hotel, canceling the suite I'd paid for under both our names, and another to the jeweler, arranging for the wedding rings to be locked in the safe, uncollected. Every step was deliberate, methodical, surgical. The hardest part, keeping my face neutral when I picked up the phone and called her. She answered immediately, sweet and breathy. "Hey babe," she said, "you all set for today?" I swallowed the bile. "Yeah, just grabbing a coffee before heading to the venue." "Oh," she giggled, "you're not supposed to see me until I walk down the aisle." "No," I thought. "You're not supposed to see me until I'm done taking back everything you tried to steal." "Instead," I said, couldn't be more excited. We hung up, and I stared at my reflection in the black screen of the phone that I didn't see a groom, that I saw a man ready to walk his betrayer to the edge, and let her take one final step on her own. The venue looked like something out of a bridal magazine, that a restored stone estate with white marble columns, imported florals draped across every banister, and a string quartet playing Vivaldi on the lawn like they were paid in gold. From the outside everything was perfect, inside I was ice. The guests began to arrive around 2:30, polished, laughing, oblivious, men in tailored suits, women in jewel-toned dresses, sipping champagne in slow sips like time itself was stretching out just to admire the moment. That it was warm for October, not hot, but the kind of sunlit afternoon that photographs well, the kind you lie about later, say it was the best day of your life, the best day of someone's life, maybe, just not hers. Not today. That I stood near the steps leading into the main hall, surrounded by old friends, co-workers, extended family members I barely recognized. Every handshake, every shoulder pat, every congratulations, man, felt like a brick in my chest. That I smiled, that I nodded, that I thanked them for coming, but in my right hand, tucked discreetly inside my jacket pocket, was the phone, her phone, the one with enough evidence to burn every lie down to the foundation. That I ran my thumb across the screen, still off, still heavy with truth. That it didn't shake in my hand, that I didn't flinch, because the man I was a week ago would have fallen apart. The man I was now, he was waiting. The ceremony was set for 3 o'clock sharp, the chairs were perfectly aligned, rows of ivory roses lined the aisle like a runway to heaven, candles flickered under delicate glass domes, everything whispered elegance, and then she appeared, Emily, descending the grand staircase like she owned the world. Her dress was ivory lace, fitted just enough to remind everyone in the crowd that she was beautiful, delicate but not innocent, her hair swept up in soft waves, her makeup flawless, a soft pink glow on her cheeks, like she was embarrassed by the attention but secretly drinking in every glance. She was glowing, beaming, the picture of a woman moments away from sealing her victory. She locked eyes with me briefly, tilted her head, gave me that sweet, practiced smile, the one that used to melt me. Now it only confirmed one thing, she didn't suspect a thing. That I turned toward the altar, hands behind my back, steady as granite. That I could hear the chatter fade as people were ushered to their seats. The string quartet shifted to something more sentimental, doves, real ones, because of course, cooed softly from their cages on the balcony, and yet I felt nothing. That no nerves, just the ticking of a clock. That my best man leaned in and whispered, "You good, man?" "Never better," I replied, my voice calm, but inside, I was counting. 3 steps to the front. 2 minutes to the music cue. 1 moment of silence before everything changed. Because when the doors opened, when she took that first step toward me, thinking she'd won, it wouldn't be the beginning of our marriage. It would be the beginning of my reveal. The chapel had fallen into that sacred hush that only exists moments before a life is supposed to change. Sunlight filtered through stained glass and fractured color, the scent of lilies and polished wood hung in the air. Emily stood across from me, her hand light in mine, her eyes glistening like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. She looked radiant. That if you didn't know any better, you'd call it love. In her eyes, the officiant, an older man with a gentle voice and a worn leather Bible, smiled warmly and began the vows. Words rolled out in soft cadence, forever, unity, fidelity. Everyone leaned in. Then he asked that question, if there is anyone here who knows of any reason this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. 1 breath. 2 And then I raised my hand. Gasps rippled through the rows like someone had thrown a stone into a still lake. Heads turned. My brother shifted in his seat. Emily's father blinked, confused. Her mother's hand went to her chest. Emily laughed, light, nervous. "It's a joke," she said quickly, glancing at the crowd. "He's joking." But I wasn't. That I reached into my jacket and pulled out the phone. "This," I said clearly, holding it up, "is the reason." Emily's smile faltered, that perfect little smile she'd weaponized since the day we met. It cracked. That I turned to the guests. I wasn't going to say anything. That I was just going to walk away quietly, let her keep the illusion, let you all believe this was real. I turned back to her, but then I thought, no, that's what she's counting on. Silence. The room was frozen. "This phone," I said, "was hidden in her closet. Inside it, messages with a man named Travis, her ex, the one she told me didn't matter." A murmur started. The kind that starts with disbelief and spreads like fire. Messages about bank accounts, about waiting until after the honeymoon, about how dumb I am, how easy I was to manipulate. I glanced at her parents. She was planning to rob me blind. Emily stepped forward, her voice rising. let's talk about this privately. I stepped back. No, you wanted a public ceremony. Here's your public ending. Her expression collapsed in slow motion, panic in her eyes, the smile gone, just bare skin and shaking lips now. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I turned to the crowd. You all deserve to know who she really is, and who I almost married. I nodded once to the officiant, who looked too stunned to speak, and then I walked away. Yelling, slamming, final glance over the shoulder, just footsteps echoing down the aisle between stunned faces, stiff bouquets, and silence thick enough to cut with a knife. I walked out into the sunlight alone, and it felt like freedom. The world didn't end after I walked out of that chapel. It just got quieter. I didn't go home right away. I checked into a modest hotel a few towns over. No suite, no view, just for blank walls, a stiff mattress, and silence. I left my phone on the nightstand face down. I didn't need to look at it to know what was coming. The fallout wasn't instant. It started as a vibration, then then a flood, calls, voicemails, messages. The screen lit up again and again with numbers I recognized and ones I didn't. By sunset, the one I expected the least finally came through, Travis. His number flashed on the screen like a punchline I hadn't asked for. Text, 6 to 17 p.m, you think you're clever, you just blew up her life, and for what? A little pride, you don't know half of it, man. You'll regret this. I stared at the words for a long moment, then typed exactly 4. Reply, 6:19 p.m, tell it to the judge. That was the last thing I sent. I didn't need his anger. I didn't need his excuses, and I didn't owe him my attention. Then came her. It started that night, around 9 p.m. First a text, please, just talk to me. Then a voice message, breathless and cracked with emotion, please, if you just let me explain, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It wasn't about the money, not really. I was scared. I panicked, please don't shut me out. Then silence, then another message, and another, the next morning, an email, then 2. Then 5. By the end of the week, I had over 20 messages in different formats, each one a different flavor of apology. Some were desperate, some self-pitying, some laced with nostalgia, photos of us from our trip to the Keys, notes from when we were planning the house, but none of it mattered. Because the man she was writing to didn't exist anymore. I read some of the messages, just enough to confirm what I already knew. She wasn't sorry for the plan, she was sorry she got caught. I didn't respond. I didn't even block her. I just let the silence speak for me. That's what she couldn't handle, not the rage, not revenge, the indifference. I wasn't haunted. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. It's a strange kind of peace, realizing that someone you thought you loved was a mask the whole time, but once that mask cracks, there's no mystery left, just drywall and wiring behind a painted smile. I spent the rest of the week resetting everything. Financials, security, paperwork. My lawyer sent her a cease and desist, the prenup held, her access to my accounts, gone, her name on the property, removed. By Friday, she was legally nothing more than a stranger, and emotionally, even less than that. They say time heals. I don't buy that. Time doesn't heal anything. It just reveals who you are after the wreckage. Reveals what you're really made of when everything soft inside you has been burned away. Weeks have passed, enough distance now to look back without flinching, and when I do, I don't see heartbreak anymore. I see a man I don't recognize, the man I was, the man who said, I trust her, when something deep in his gut whispered don't, the man who smiled through doubts, who brushed aside inconsistencies, who chose the fantasy over the facts because it felt better to believe. That man died the moment I opened her closet, the version that walked out of that chapel. He didn't look back. I've thought a lot about the idea of betrayal. People describe it as a knife in the back, but that's too dramatic, too bloody. Real betrayal is quieter, slower. It's a series of small, deliberate omissions. 1,000 paper cuts until you bleed dry and don't even notice until you're crawling. But here's the thing. I'm not crawling anymore. I stood up. I took control, and in doing so, I learned something I never expected to: gratitude, not for her, not for what she did, but for what it gave me: clarity, discipline, the ability to look someone dead in the eye and say, no more. There's power in restraint. Choosing silence over spectacle. Walking away instead of burning the house down. It's not weakness. It's mastery. Her plan failed not because I stopped loving her, but because I started loving me more. She lost the moment she bet I'd stay quiet, and me, I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. I bought a new place. Smaller. Clean. No shared memories clinging to the walls. Why business is thriving, freed from the distraction of someone watching my money like a hawk. Why circles tighter. Why brother and I, closer than ever. He saw it before I did, for that, I'll always owe him, and when I wake up now, I don't start the day with worry that I don't check my phone with dread that I breathe that I live that I build, because I'm not the same man who almost stood at that altar. I'm sharper now. Calmer. Unshakable. So when people ask if I regret what happened, I tell them no, her betrayal, that was the fire, but my life now, that's the forge, and I'm walking out of it forged in steel. Her fall was supposed to be my ruin, but instead, it was my resurrection.